Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, for you for life.
Hello and welcome to the fifth installment of our webinar series Around the World with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Georgia Properties, co-sponsored and brought to you by UnniCo, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Georgia Properties, and the World Trade Center Atlanta. I'm Max Sutherland, President and CEO of the World Trade Center Atlanta and moderator and MC of today's presentation. I'd like to take a moment quickly to introduce our team. Let me share my screen here real quick. Our team is, from left to right, we have Melinda McBrayer. She is a certified realtor, international realtor. I want to make sure I have this correct. Certified international realtor. Myself, Alex Wazorek, who's co-founder and CEO of UnniCo. Danila Palmieri, co-founder and COO of UnniCo. And our legal expert, John Parkerson, international business attorney with Hall Booth Smith. Wait a minute, hold it. Let me stop my screen share. There we go. And let's see here. Melinda, no, Alex, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Max, for the introduction. So I'm Alex Wazorek with UnniCo. At UnniCo, we pretty much just have one goal, that is to find the next unicorns or to convert you into a unicorn. And we can do that through helping you through venture capital, private equity, funding, white label sales and marketing, and the back office, through marketing agency we have, and also through a cross-border and trading operation that UnniCo has. And it's very nice to be here today. And again, thank you, Max, for the introduction.
Alex, thank you. Danila, would you like to say a few words?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us and stay here with us. As Alex said, we do a lot of things at UnniCo as a one-stop solution. We connect, we close, and we execute. And I'm here to help him, right, deliver all these to our clients. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Danila. And as I mentioned earlier, our legal resource, our legal expert is John Parkerson. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I am John Parkerson. I'm an international business attorney with Hall Booth Smith here in Atlanta. I'm formerly with Delta Airlines as their international legal counsel. So I have a broad experience in giving international advice, but I serve sort of as a bridge between the US client and that client who may be relocating abroad. So in this case, the UK.
John, thank you. And Melinda McBrayer, would you take it from here?
Melinda McBrayer here. I am a certified international property specialist with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Georgia Properties. I provide domestic and international relocation property acquisition assistance through our global network of affiliates and companies. And with great pleasure, I would love to introduce you to our two special guests from across the pond in London, our Berkshire Hathaway Home Services K & Company, which is an exclusive UK affiliate of Warren Buffett's global real estate business. And I'd like to introduce you first to our special guest speaker, Matt Staten. He's the head of lettings. And then I'll let Matt speak, and then Matt will introduce you to Salil Joshi, who is the global head of relocation for K & Company. Matt, you want to go ahead?
Thank you very much, Melinda, for a very warm welcome, and it's fantastic to be here today. And thank you, Max, as well for the warm introduction and inviting us on. My name is Matt Staton, and I am the head of lettings here at Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices K&Co. My role is to head up the lettings, which is the UK word for rentals, the rental department here in the UK for Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices. Basically, a little bit about us, just for those of you who don't know who we are. As Melinda rightfully said, we are the exclusive UK affiliate at the moment for Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices. We operate in London. That's our area of operation, and we really have a major focus on prime central London. That's kind of the area we tend to focus on. We currently have 3 offices. We operate here in Marbella, where I am now, covering Mayfair and Fitzrovia. We also have an office over in Hyde Park, which covers Notting Hill. Of course, you may know the film, and of course Bayswater as well. And of course, we also have our newest office, our King's Cross office, which covers King's Cross, Islington, and also Bloomsbury areas, and Clerkenwell too. So we cover most of prime central London already. We have a mandate to expand pretty aggressively over the next 7 to 8 years, up to 10 offices and maybe beyond. And we really have a mandate to cover the whole of London. So, you know, for those of you who know London, you know, from Heathrow to Canary Wharf, from, you know, Swiss Cottage or Wembley in the north down to Wimbledon in the south, we have a real mandate to kind of cover most of London. In terms of what our business does here in London, we really essentially kind of have 4 arms to what we do as a business. The first is the most obvious. We have a residential sales, being involved in the sales of residential property. We have a residential lettings department as well, which I head up. Here in London, quite unusually, which may not be the case in some other places, lettings and rentals is a major part of the UK property market. Most of the major players over here in the estate agency world would say probably 40 to 50% of their revenue comes from the rental side of their business. So rentals in a city like London with high house prices and real estate prices, renting is a major part of our industry. We also have a block management department, so we manage sort of buildings and blocks and things like that. And finally, we also have a relocation department, and my colleague Salil obviously is here representing that today. I think the question I get asked the most at the moment is what's happening with the market. I've just been at a development today over in Stratford, and the first question the person asked me was what's happening with the market with COVID. So I'll give you a little bit of a brief overview as to where we are at the moment here in the prime central London market, with a focus on the rental side, if I may. But I will touch on sales as well. I'm sure Salil will too. What we've really seen, let's go back. So if we go back to 2008, we obviously had the financial crash, the banking crisis, and we saw prices on the sales and the rental side across London really drop significantly by 25 to 30% in some cases. And what we saw is certain parts of the city, your Canary Wharfs, your city areas, big financial districts were really hit the hardest, but prime central London as well got a major kick during that downturn. But then what we saw as we came through that period was really the beginning of what was 8 years of continuous growth in terms of rental prices and capital growth on properties. The prices of properties really went up year on year, all the way really until we got to about 2015, which is when we had something that a few people may have heard of called Brexit. We had an EU referendum, and kind of politics aside on that, what we had when we got to 2016 was a huge amount of uncertainty. And that really, stifled the market, it really put the brakes on what was a very buoyant market at the time. And we really had then from 2016 to 2019, 3 years of pent-up demand not being able to be released. So we saw a lot of people wanting to make decisions, wanting to buy properties, wanting to rent properties, but maybe delaying some of those decisions until we got a bit of clarity on what was going to happen with the EU referendum results. Fast forward to 2019 December, we had a general election here in the UK. We had a decisive victory for the Conservative Party, and really from that point on, Brexit was a formality. January 2020, and I don't know if Salil, I'm sure Salil will agree with this, but we really saw an incredible January 2020. We saw unprecedented amounts of buyer registrations, applicant registrations on the rental side. That pent-up demand was really being released, and it was looking like it was going to be an incredible year. Obviously, then in February we had COVID-19, which obviously sort of reared its head. And since then, we've, I think, had a resilient market, transactions still absolutely happening on both sales and lettings. But naturally, what we've seen is, with there being restrictions on travel, restrictions on international moves, 3 lockdowns, various tier systems here in the UK, we've again seen the brake be put on things a little bit, but we are still seeing absolutely some, lots of units being transacted. At this time, we think the market is probably circa down between 10 to 13% from the beginning of 2020. But again, I think the feeling here on the ground is the fundamentals are absolutely there, and hopefully once we can come through the situation we're in, we should see that growth resume and things hopefully go back relatively quickly. So that's where we are today. Melinda, as you touched on earlier, we spoke before, we are deemed here in the UK workers who are able to go to work even in a lockdown. We've been told the housing market can remain open. So if people want to buy property or rent property, if they need to move home, we can absolutely facilitate that. We're doing so in a very socially distanced way and a very safe way of operating. In terms of relocation, I'm going to bring in my colleague Salil, who can maybe give you a little bit of an insight into what's kind of going on in that side of things at the moment. Salil.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. So as Matt touched upon, that the London market has been hit with COVID, but what hasn't changed in the last year, surprisingly, is the amount of people coming to London to live and work. So Brexit effectively did put the brakes on investment, but there are opportunities in London, especially with vaccinations and the Brexit's finally over, that people are coming here and they are relocating. Mainly the tech companies, so Facebook, Amazon, they have big headquarters here. They have a headquarters coming up in King's Cross, where our offices are. There's a new Facebook office there. So it depends on the sector, so how London looks to you. So financial sector has been hit with Brexit, and that hasn't recovered. So certain industries are not going to expand like they would have done maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But saying that, London is open for investment. Now, we always use the word London, but effectively as relocation, we cover the whole of the UK, so we can move clients. So if you've got clients moving to Manchester, Birmingham, or any other part of the UK, including Scotland, we can help. We have a network of people and resources in each of the major cities. We specialize in the property, in the schools, in the sort of area orientation aspect of the move. What we don't do is immigration. So we can't assist I can put you in touch with the right people, but we don't do that ourselves. We're specifically property, schools, helping spouses, language. Those are our key points of our expertise, should we say. And we also do buying for clients as well. So we act in the interest of the buyer. Obviously, as a real estate here, we act in the vendor's interest, but I have a special remit to act in the buyer's interest. So if you've got clients moving to London or wanting to invest in London, we can still help them, or again, in the UK. I really generally don't know how many minutes I've been talking for. I've got a stopwatch on, so I don't know if you want me to talk about anything specifically right now, or hand it over back to you.
Salil, that was very good. Thank you. And Matt, thank you as well. Before we get to the Q&A here, our panel discussion, I do want to share with everybody that you can use the chat function to introduce yourself. But if you have any questions you'd like to ask, we do have one of our team members who is monitoring the Q&A function. You'll find both of those functions at the bottom of your screen by scrolling, moving your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, and you'll see participants, Q&A, and chat functions there. So let's start with some questions here. First question is to Matt. What is unique about living in London and the UK? Why should someone consider relocating to London as opposed to perhaps anywhere else in the UK?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, look, I think, London specifically is, very much, the heartbeat of the UK. London is, it's obviously the capital, but it's a global city. It's a global financial hub. It's in terms of what makes London great, it's got incredible culture, incredible history. London still is a gateway to Europe. You've got the Eurostar. You can go to St Pancras Station, where I was today, and within 2 hours you can be in the center of Paris, and then from Paris, you're another few hours, 4, 5, 6 hours to Rome. So you really are you've got a fantastic kind of hub of connections here in London. London's a great place to invest. It's got the UK as a whole has a fantastic legal system. It's a pro-business economy. It's an exciting time, I think, to look at investing in the UK and specifically London. I think we've just completed about 900 billion pounds of trade deals across the world, as a country now. So it's absolutely, we as a country, I think we're absolutely pro-business, and it's a great place to invest. The great thing about London in terms of property specifically, why buy a property to rent out in London? Why buy a property for yourself to live here? I think the great thing about the UK is that there are no restrictions on what you can buy. So, for example, in some countries, there might be a scheme where, if you're an international buyer, you can only buy a certain type of property. Here in what we see here in London is that really you can buy resales, you can buy secondhands, you can buy different properties, which that gives you a much, if you're going to look at buying a portfolio of properties, you get a much better balanced portfolio of properties if you're not just buying brand new build apartments. So you get a really exciting mix of things you can invest in here. Historically as well, if we look at the last 30-40 years, if you look at a graph, there's been ups and downs, but for sure the values of properties here have gone absolutely up here in London, and I imagine they'll continue to do so for the future. Great healthcare, great universities, great schools, and afternoon tea as well. There's another reason, and plus the Queen. So there's a few more reasons why coming and investing here in the UK or moving here to the UK is I think a good thing to do.
Very good. Can you talk a little bit about industries, because you have of course many cities in the UK, but are there specific industries that gravitate to specific cities?
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
assume that London is probably more headquarters for financial services and some of those service industries. But can you talk to maybe some of the other industries like tech and manufacturing, or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think, the UK is a major service. It's a services economy. It's, we're a services economy. The obvious one for London is, of course, the city of London, Canary Wharf. It's a major financial hub. And, of course, a lot of the roles, a lot of the jobs here, a lot of the headquarters of, those companies are based here in London. Absolutely. We have an office at the moment here in King's Cross, which is a really, YouTube have got their headquarters, I've got sort of an office there. Google, I think, have got an office there as well. So, there are certain parts of London, absolutely, where, you're seeing certain industries really starting to pop up. If you look at Reading, for example, is a real tech heartland of the UK. So, for example, Microsoft have their UK head office in Reading. Various of the tech companies are based there as well. And you tend to find, where you get these bubbles of industry, whether it's, manufacturing, which we still have up in the Northeast, for example, with car making in Sunderland, we make a lot of cars, city in the Northeast of England, whether it's tech bubbles down in Reading, or whether it's financial heartlands, financial global city here in London, you absolutely see, those workers gravitating to those areas naturally. So, yeah, there's a lot of different things where you want to invest, and Salil, feel free to come in on this, but I think really depends on what your goals are as an investment. If you want a high rental yield, and that's all you care about, then investing outside of London is probably a good idea. If you want a mixture of a good rental yield and good capital growth over short, medium to long term, then London is of course historically always going to sort of achieve those results for you.
That's right. Basically, the manufacturing part of the UK is outside of London. For example, Cambridge has more retail park tech, pharmaceuticals, and the north has more manufacturing. And obviously with the Boris Johnson's green ideas, because apparently we're going to have no petrol cars or diesel cars in the next 9 years. There's going to be battery productions, etc., and they're all going to come out of London. So London is more service driven, and the rest of the UK is more manufacturing, if there is, because of space as well. So there are major cities like Manchester and Birmingham where there is going to be investment. There's going to be a new railway line linking London to Birmingham, and that'll obviously increase values in these other cities. So as a relocation specialist, we look at the UK, not just London. So it depends on the investor, what they want to do, what sort of yield they're looking for. But it's definitely growth outside of London as much as London.
Excellent.
Yeah,
so I don't know which person is better to answer this question, but what are you seeing as the current trend as a direct result of COVID, of relocations within London and within the UK, of British citizens or British nationals versus relocations that are coming from abroad? Where are they going?
Will I answer this one, Matt, first of all? I would say we've had about 25 moves in January, a mix of global moves, not specifically American moves, of which I think 5 or 6 have been from the US. And all of my US clients have moved out of the initial, so we say the tube network. If we call London the tube network as opposed to London sprawling. So, Max, the answer is my American clients are moving away because they're used to more space, and my European clients are used to smaller spaces. So effectively, they are okay with a more centered living. So the answer is it's a split, because if you're coming from New York, London is relatively inexpensive still, and you get more space. But if you're coming from Texas, you'll just laugh when my office looks like a bedroom closet. So effectively, you need the space. So yes, we move away, and obviously you're not commuting to your office potentially for the next 6 to 8 months. So that has a bearing as well.
Yeah. Are you seeing though within England itself, of the British citizens, British nationals, are they staying put? Are they, because of the coronavirus and work from home, are they relocating to outside the city as we see a lot of here in the US?
I think you still live where your family is and your sort of network is. I think that's really important. Your network hasn't changed. COVID may have stopped you from going to the office, but it hasn't stopped you from your network is still within a reach of where you currently live. So the only reason why, yes, of course, London is like New York in the respect that, you move away over the bridge into Queens and you get much more space than Manhattan. That has driven some people to move out of London for space. But not just for that one reason of COVID. It may be they've decided at that point, let's do it, let's make the move. But it hasn't been droves of people leaving London to move to the countryside yet. But there has been a shift.
Okay, good.
I think as well, just on that, what we've seen is from the experience I've seen of people who have decided to make that move, a lot of the time it's been people who were playing with the idea previously. It was kind of in their timeline. COVID has kind of, almost accelerated that a little bit, to go and get that bit of outdoor space, to get that larger kind of, footfall on their property. But, I think I still think fundamentally, London is going to remain a popular place for people. And I think a lot of people, some people, there's a lot of, I think people at the moment have put off their next move and they're kind of staying where they are and they've played with the idea. But ultimately, the things that make London or any major city, a great place to live, the amenities, the infrastructure, the travel, the opportunities, that's taken a long time to develop. And I think in the long run, I think some people will move away, but I think, London will still remain a major temptation for people to live.
Good. And I do have a couple of questions that I want to get to regarding the healthcare system and how it differs from us here, and how the ease of maneuvering, first of all, the ease of getting into it and then maneuvering around it. But I have some questions first here from our attendees. Jim Munson has asked, how do referral fees work with UK agents?
Yeah, so I mean, basically, if it's someone who is part, obviously the Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices network is vast. It's one of the biggest in the world, and absolutely, we've had a lot of referrals. We've had people referred over from California, from Florida, you name it. We've had a lot of referrals from Dubai the other day, and yeah, there is a referral network there where those agents, essentially are compensated if for referring over a potential buyer or a potential renter. There is a compensation sort of there in place. So yeah, there is that's absolutely there.
Okay. Another question here from Daniel Williams to both of you. How do you feel the capital gains tax breaks have helped investors? And do you think a potential extension will help the market?
I'm not a specialist in taxation, but I answered the only point I'm going to make about that. Any reduction in tax or advantageous tax elements only spur the market upwards, because London has stability. So I'm not sure if it's just one thing that focuses London's growth. It's many components, but I couldn't answer that question as Matt could.
Yeah, I mean, my focus is more on the rental side of things, but I think I agree with Salil there, which is, over the years, at the moment, for example, there's no stamp duty, below 500,000, and these things absolutely help. Does it have a major impact on the prime central London market where we operate, where many properties are far over $1 million? Probably not a huge amount for the people who are buying those properties. Definitely in some parts of the country, it has a major effect. Not here, I don't feel so much in prime and outer prime areas. But I think any sort of taxation break, any incentive, and I expect there will be some over the coming years. It's a stimulus, but it's not going to be a key driver for someone, suddenly deciding to invest into here in the UK, I don't think.
Okay, so Daniel actually just posted a correction here, and I'm not sure even what this means. He said, I meant stamp duty.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that even is.
It's a good question. So the stamp duty, below 500,000 now, there's no stamp currently. It's going to be running out soon. It was a limited thing. Many agents here in the UK have been lobbying the government to try and extend that stamp duty holiday. It doesn't look like it's going to be extended at this point. We'll keep a close eye on it though. But yeah, to answer that question, absolutely. If you're looking to buy a property, below 500,000, that part of the market no longer need to pay, stamp duty, which, on a property which is, for example, on at 400,000 sterling, that's going to save someone about £11,000. So of course, at that end of the market, it's absolutely going to stimulate that part of the market, which again is more outer London areas. It will have an impact. Again, a property here which is on at £3 or £4 million, not going to have a big an impact as it would in some of those those other areas.
Good to know. Jim has another question here. As a relocation, and I think this is going to be more for Salil, but both of you can take a jab at this. As a relocation company, are you dealing with a lot of the big relocation companies like Serva, Cardis, and Brookfield?
I know of all those players. No, we're much more personal, much more bespoke. Serva and Brookfield have London representation already, so we don't have a relationship with them. They already have London hubs, should we say? So they're not going to not give work to their own people. We're more personal. That's our USP. But we can work with anyone if they came to us and they one of the servers was moving them, but they wanted to use us. Of course, we'd welcome it with open arms. Why wouldn't you? But no, we know of them, but we're much more personal. We have scale, but we're more personal.
Good. That's also good to hear. And I want to get back now to the question that I was asking, that I mentioned that I wanted to touch on earlier, which was the healthcare system. talk to us about your healthcare system because it differs from ours. And what is the difficulty of not only getting into the system, but what is the level of difficulty of maneuvering through the system?
I'm not sure I give all the right answers to you, Matt. Effectively, we have a free service here to British nationals. And if you're coming in from the US, I think you pay a percentage towards that to your health care, but you're not turned away. So when you come to the UK, you get a national insurance number allocated to you as part of your immigration, and that entitles you to healthcare. So you register with a local doctor, a local dentist, and you get care. But I don't know how much of a percentage of that, and maybe Matt knows, would you have to pay a certain percentage back or just a one-off fee? I think it could be as little as £200 for treatment, but it's not. Yeah, sorry, Matt. Do you know?
No, I don't have the exact figure still, but I think you're right. It's a small amount in comparison to, I think, what you would have in some other countries, for example. And yeah, I mean, as Salil said, we have a healthcare system which is committed to being, it's a free healthcare system for people. We pay for prescriptions, so if you have a prescription for treatment medicine, I think you pay something like £7 or £14, no matter what that drug is, whether it costs £500 or whatever. You get your pharmacy and your drugs are somewhat subsidized in that sense. But yeah, the healthcare system, it's a national health system. It's very impressive. I think it's one of the things that the British people hold dearest to their heart, I think, is the NHS. And I think for a small amount that's paid in, and I can see Salil may have an answer for us shortly, I think you do get access to that, which is obviously, again, as I said earlier, another attractive aspect of the UK, I think, to anyone who is considering moving here themselves or buying a property here to rent out or to let their family stay in or something like that.
Yeah, I haven't got the exact figure, Max, but I think you are covered, but to what level, I don't know.
Do you guys also have private insurance available? Can you purchase private insurance, or is everybody just in the same healthcare system, period?
No, you can purchase, and a lot of my clients usually have, as part of their package where they come with their companies, a private healthcare system. So that's why you may not even come into the NHS system at all, because your private healthcare would look after you. And anyone can join a private health system as well as the NHS system here. So I presume that's why I'm not sure the answer to your question, because most of my clients have private healthcare.
Yeah, it's just to expand on that. Max, a lot of the companies, a lot of those kind of, blue chip companies who are relocating people over, they'll often have, whether it's Bupa Healthcare or, Nuffield Healthcare are two of the big providers here in the UK. They'll often have some sort of company private medical insurance, especially for someone who's more of a senior member of the staff. They'll often have some of that as part of their relocation package. And so, yeah, a lot of the time they will just go directly to them and might not even come into contact with the NHS, but, there is that option there if people need it, if they don't have that.
So do immigrants who don't come in via a company relocation, if they just come in on their own, are they eligible for the national healthcare system? The free healthcare?
So again, Salil, feel free to jump in here, but I'll just leave this one to me. I think from my own, and I'm talking from sort of experience of someone who I know specifically here, it depends on what sort of level, what visa you have when you arrive here into the UK. I think initially, certainly, people who I know who've been here a few years, and London is is a complete melting pot. It's a massively multicultural society, and we have people from all over the world here in London. And yeah, absolutely, they have access to the healthcare system. There is a process I think they have to do to get set up so they can benefit from that. But certainly it's not a case that people, if someone was moving over from Italy tomorrow, they certainly wouldn't have to have private health, insurance in order to move to the UK. So yeah, that is something that is a benefit of being here in the UK, a great public health system.
Yeah, I think, Max, if you're just walking to see a doctor, you're not necessarily get charged. But if you have to have an operation and you haven't got any, they would probably charge you. That's the best way of describing it. But if you had to get to see a doctor, he may not charge you for your consultation, but he may charge you for the medicine you need to buy if you're not a resident.
Got it.
Better way.
Enos, an anonymous attendee here is actually posting some information. If you're planning on staying in the, and I don't know the accuracy of this, so you guys may be able to tell me better, but if you're planning on staying in the UK for more than 6 months, then you'll have to pay an immigration health surcharge as part of your visa application. Standard surcharge fee is currently $300 per year for students and each of their dependents, or £400 per year per person for everyone else. Is this a premium that you guys pay as well as nationals?
No, so I think that's probably what Salil was touching on earlier when he was saying there's kind of a sort of a surcharge that you pay. So thank you, Anonymous, very, very useful. But you know, it's not something that look, as a UK national, we pay tax like everybody else, and you know that taxation is used to fund the national health system. So we are paying for it to an extent. But in terms of is there a specific surcharge? No.
So that tax is paid through income tax, not sales tax.
Yeah, that's through, well, we pay obviously national insurance tax and we pay income tax, yeah.
Got it.
That is a direct tax, not indirect tax, yeah.
It's a direct tax, got it.
Direct tax, sorry, yeah.
I'm actually wanting to ask Salil, what is, because you do a lot of the soft, I want to say the soft skills or the soft relocation issues of with regards to schools and spouses and things like that. What would you say is the greatest challenge or hurdle for a relocation, especially on the spouse side?
Oh, how long have you got? No, so I think if you're moving a family, you know, the inherent difficulties there. So the first thing is adjusting to where you're coming from into London. And as Matt said, it's an expensive city if you're moving to London. And therefore the space is different to what you're coming from. So you get used to that and the value for money, should we say, depending where you come. If you come from New York, we look good value. But if we're coming in from other parts of the world, we're very expensive, right? So, sorry, my phone's ringing. So then you've got, so that's the first hurdle. Then you've got obviously if you're moving, one partner is not working necessarily. You've got that adjustment. And then you've got children, then you've got to find a school linked to where you're living. If it's a state school, which is a free school, then that links to your actual area where you live. If it's a private school, then effectively you can live where you wish and then send your kids to a particular school. So Matt, there's 100 things that could, you know, cause issues, but I think it's just trying to make sure you balance everyone's wishes. And
are there any issues? So if an individual comes in as part of their company, relocation, the spouse, can the spouse find a job, or are there restrictions to spouses working if they are not relocated as part of the company move?
Sure. Like I said earlier, I'm not immigration. That's where I have a difficulty in answering completely. So some of the panelists might know better than I do. But the visas are linked to you. If your spouse is linked to your visa, so if you're the person that's employed, then their right of stay and their right to work is linked to that particular visa. So it depends on how they've come in. The partner hasn't, well, obviously Brexit's not relevant now, but you know, if they were part of the EU, for example, that Spanish family, they were coming into London, they could work as an EU national, which has now changed. So it is linked to the main person's visa, work visa. Everyone's linked to that.
And Max, this is Melinda. What I have seen in doing relocations worldwide is the biggest restrictions are with those in healthcare. For example, doctors, I'll have people that are moved, their wife or husband, their spouse is in the medical field, and they can't just come over and work. They have to go through a process of schooling and getting licenses again. So you have to check for each country is different, and each, you know, you just have to have that checked before you go. And that's the importance of, you know, checking and before you move to understand those restrictions? So that was a great question.
John, I see you nodding your head. Oh, thank you, Melinda. John, I see you nodding your head. Is there more information that you can share regarding that?
No, not specifically. I was just nodding my head because I can see that what the value of a team approach to these kinds of issues. And it's apparent to me that, you know, you want to go to a relocation service, for example, Berkshire Hathaway, you know, that has broad experience, and they've developed a wide network of experts, whether it's immigration or tax or you know, other legal questions, you know, whatever, or healthcare. I mean, I think that's the chief value, is knowing what questions to ask. And I know Melinda does that, identifying issues and the questions to ask of the experts on the other side of the ocean to resolve those kinds of issues in advance.
And just to expound on that, John, and that, you know, that was great, is that, yes, and part of the services that Berkshire Hathaway provides is that we have affiliate companies that we go to as our experts. For example, we have a company that will do global moves. And what I found in the past that's been an issue is that people, companies will give them a certain stipend. Here's the amount of money that you have to do, to move your household goods. And people want to bring those. You know, it's really not as expensive as people think. So what they do is they don't know what they don't know. So they go out, they get somebody to come pack up their household goods. They send them to a exporter to send them out. And if they don't get a mover that's internationally certified, like Berkshire Hathaway has, they don't know that if you're doing a household freight forward, that all of your household goods have to be packed a certain way to be able to be shipped. So they get there, they bring it there, they're ready to send their stuff. They think they've gotten a good deal, they're saving money on their stipend, and then they come to find out, oh, everything has to be repacked. Or they get there and the company that they use to freight forward over does.
Melinda, we lost your audio.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. And then they get to the country and they don't have the people that can get them in through quickly, because every country is different in what is required as far as packing slips. So you really need those experts.
So that makes it a good point. That makes a good point as to why you should go to experts who can provide all of these services as opposed to trying to do it on your own. Good comment there. Back to purchasing. What is the well, we already discussed the difficulty of purchasing as an investment from foreign players. There basically is none, from what I understand, in the UK. But is there a difference in length of time for purchasing? And is there a difference between a cash purchase versus a mortgaged purchase?
I mean, Salil, feel free to jump in on this one as well. But again, so my focus tends to be more on the rental side and probably managing those investments once they've been purchased. But I have a bit of knowledge on it, which is, yeah, I mean, you know, clearly a cash purchase has many advantages. Number one, you know, in the eyes of the seller, so the person's property who you're buying, you know, they still, to this day, I think, will have a preference for a cash buyer. It's quicker, there's less things can go wrong, less mortgage approvals. You know, the mortgage approval process in the UK, if you have a good mortgage broker, and I think that's very, very important for people to know, if you have a good mortgage broker, they can really speed up that process for you. When I bought my own property, I had a broker, a mortgage broker, and the person who literally was sat next to me in the office at the time was also buying a property with the same financial provider, the same bank. they went directly, I went via the broker, and actually my turnaround time for that approval was far, far quicker, despite the fact I was kind of going through a well-connected broker. So it makes a good difference on that front. And yeah, of course, the effect of that is, a big part of the delay when it comes to buying a property, whether it's surveying or, getting back those buyers reports. A big factor in the delay can be, the mortgage approval. So if you can fast track that and go straight in with a cash offer, then not only does it put you in a very strong place as a buyer, but it also will make the process a lot quicker for you. Salil, and if you want to add to that or jump in.
Yeah, no, I agree with that comment. But the main problem is if you're coming into the UK with no credit history, no lender is going to lend you that money. Or if they are going to lend you that money, it's going to be on rates which, are not favorable. So the main thing is you're going to have to come in with cash if you're buying, or build up a credit, which could take you up to a year. So if you are looking to invest in the UK, and that's not London specific, that's UK specific, then you need to effectively, have mortgage in place or finance in place. And as it says, without the mortgage element, everything's speedier for sure. But if you need to raise money, then you need to wait.
Right. Absolutely. And just to add to that, bring it back to kind of what I do. Anyone who's coming in internationally, like Salil said, they're not going to have that credit history here in the UK. They're going to really struggle to get any sort of favorable mortgage rate if they can get a mortgage at all. But what we often find is a lot of international people will come over initially, maybe for a year, maybe rent a property, get settled in, find an area that they like here in London. Because if you're going to spend £1 million or at least £500,000 on a property, you should probably make sure you like the area that you're going to buy in. So a lot of people will come here, rent for maybe a year to 18 months, get a good feel for the area. And then at that point, once they've built up some credit history, as Salil said, then potentially look to purchase a property once they're settled here. So again, that's another strategy for sort of anyone who is looking at this, thinking to move over to the UK or invest in the UK. That's a potential sort of thing that they could look to do.
Interesting.
That's the best route forward, Max, because most of the clients that we work with who become buying clients when relocating do it the way that we just mentioned, rent.
Excellent. Alex and Danila, do you have additional insights you can talk about with regards to ways to secure an investment in London?
Yes, definitely. So I think right now, mainly with the Brexit movement, is a lot of moving parts that's still being figured out in a lot of the financial aspects. So when you think about that question from before about the tax breaks for capital gains, this is something that is in process to be overhauled right now, and that can pretty much impact people with second homes, people that don't have savings in personal accounts and things like that. You have, as of right now, this situation that there is an agreement between the European Union and the UK. Pretty much you don't have any tariffs or quotas at this time, but that's not the same for venture capital and private equity, that those entities lost passports, as we call, and they not necessarily can just free trade between UK and some other places in Europe as it used to be before. So that's something that is somewhat complex as supposed to be, because that's a major change, but definitely something that can be navigated and will require a lot of help, mostly from people coming from US or from other locations to UK, to understand very well how this plays and the ways to do it that you are not being penalized because you are living through this transition.
And you're talking about both personally and commercially, right?
Yes, because if you think about even commercially speaking, and we say that, for example, the UK is huge in energy, manufacturing, services, mining, and things like that, and you now used to belong to European Union, now you are treated as an investor from a third country under the European Union law, and so that changed the way you like somewhat a foreign investor now, and that changed the landscape as well. So this is why you need a very good tax plan and a very good understanding where this money is coming from, how it's going to be utilized, to don't be over penalized for taxes and some other things because of this change that you are no longer member of the European Union at this time.
So you're talking about then when you're talking about taxes, are you talking about exit taxes from the country of origin, even in the U.S. from the U.S., or what are you talking about with regard to taxes?
So I'm not being specific because when you talk about like US and UK and some other countries, you have tax treaties between those countries. So every country has a different rule and different agreements and things like that. What I'm trying to convey is that, for example, it's not the same as it was before. Because when UK was part of the European Union, those agreements would fall under that jurisdiction. And now with the Brexit, UK becomes a third country. So those agreements are no longer being processed or operated under the European Union rules. And that's where we have still a lot of moving parts, making decisions about what's the best way to do it, what's the best way to treat these things. And that's why I'm just pointing out that you need to have a very good support to avoid mistakes in that sense. Yeah.
So are these relocations as a result of Brexit? Are the relocations to the UK now more favorable, or are they more difficult?
Well,
as a result of Brexit.
Well, so of course, if you're relocating from Europe,
right,
then of course it was a much easier process for everyone.
Right.
But if you're relocating from a non-European country, nothing's changed.
Okay.
What has changed, when I say nothing's changed, things have of course changed. We're trying to copy the Australian point system. So, you know, your value coming into the UK has to be determined, and you have to have a minimum salary now.
Mm.
But the sort of clients that myself and Matt deal with are beyond that level anyway. They're sort of beyond the junior level. We do move junior people. I don't mean we only move VIPs. We move a team of people. You can have junior people, but even the junior people are quite recompensed, should we say, to come here. So yes, you can still come from France and Germany to work. You just got to go through the hoops. So it doesn't, see, the thing here with London, as Matt started the conversation here, is of course it's difficult right now, like it is everywhere in the world, but recovery, like Matt mentioned the 08-09 recovery. So within 6 to 8 months of the subprime meltdown, we had growth suddenly. And then we had investments, and everyone who held over, then the financial element was really important. It was before tech, should we say. They went and started their projects, which they held over. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we're all hoping that recovery is fast, and it is just another layer of bureaucracy, unfortunately, with, you know, as mentioned just a moment ago, with, you know, you've got to look at us differently. We don't look at Europe like we're friends anymore. We look at Europe like we look at you guys in Australia. We're just trading with you now. And that means that if the process to come over takes a month longer, it takes a month longer, but you can still come, and there's still opportunities here. But Brexit has effectively, it's finished now, and we have to look forward, and that forward means investment through different sources, I think. We just, you know, it's like anything, if you get used to a certain way and it changes, you get a bit like, oh, what's that about? But then you sort of get used to it. Before you know it, you've forgotten what the old system was. That's right. The only way to describe it, Max, if it's sort of, you know.
And I think as well, just to add to that, you know, there's a lot of opportunities that I think we can look to at the moment, which are a result of, you know, instability that we've had. So, you know, I checked before I came on the call. I think sterling is trading at $1.38 to a pound sterling at the moment. You know, go back a few years, you know, if you're an American at the moment and you're considering buying a property in London, you know, you are going to get a much better property now than you would have got a few years ago, just based on that currency rate alone. And then you add into the fact that prices here in London, we think, are probably circa down between 10 and 13%, probably solely down to COVID. Now, COVID is awful, but it's something that, touch wood, it's going to move, it's going to go, and we will get back to normal. And the fundamentals of London as a city are evergreen, they're strong. So I would argue to anybody that with sterling currency at a very competitive rate, we could say, I think prices in London are artificially being hampered down at the moment due to a specific pandemic. Unlike the financial crash where there was big fundamental issues, you know, once COVID, you know, moves on, I think we're going to see prices recover, as Salil said, pretty quickly. So if I was someone right now looking to invest in the UK, good currency exchange rate, pent up demand, as I talked about, all the way going back to 2016, that demand is still there, pent up, ready to be unleashed. It's a great time to invest in the UK, and specifically in a property, whether for yourself or to rent out.
So does the current pandemic environment, the COVID, does it extend the process of any kind of, whether it's commercial or personal relocation? Is it extending the process time?
So what I've seen, obviously I work very closely with my sales colleagues, and again, Salil, feel free to come in on this, but from what I've seen here on the ground, look, everybody's working remotely, especially during the first lockdown. That was a bit of a novelty, I think, for a lot of conveyance, solicitors who are in conveyancing, for example. And yeah, there was things were taking slightly longer to go through that conveyancing process than they would have been before, because everyone was getting used to working remotely and not being able to get logged onto a Zoom call, for example. But again, I think that has sped up. We have a few things such as issues with cladding here in the UK, which, again, is quite a specific issue on certain types of properties, and that can delay things at the moment too. But yeah, I think there has been a little bit of a delay, but it does seem to be speeding up a little bit again now. Salil, I don't know what you've experienced with your buyers.
I would say the same. It depends on the property you're buying, and depends on the value to a certain extent, how many people are involved in the chain. But no, Max, it's everything. Some people use COVID as an excuse to give bad service. Some people look at it as a challenge and try to do their best. Like all of us here today, we're all carrying on as as not normal, but we're carrying on as best we can, and that's what we keep doing. And then work with the right people, get the right results.
Excellent. I have 3 open questions left here that are in the Q&A. One is, from a trade perspective, how do you believe Brexit will affect the US-UK possible, the FTA, the transit authority?
Yeah. So I can help a little bit with that. So I think right now that's the $1 million questions, right? Because there's a lot of interest for this free trade agreement to happen between US and UK. I think that most of the Congress in US is willing to vote for that, but there are some concerns about the peace agreement in North Ireland and how this free trade or the FTA between US and UK could impact the advances that happen between North Ireland and UK and US. So that's one thing. And after that, you have concerns by industry. So you have people in agriculture that are concerned in UK that the US would take advantage of an agreement like that and just be more present and expand participation in that market. And pretty much in that case, they would have a problem, locally speaking. So that's one thing. Another industry that's a lot of discussions about is pharmaceuticals. It's like, if same standards are established between US and UK, would that raise the cost of the drugs, or would force UK to charge for services they don't charge today? So that's another kind of concern. You have concerns in financial institutions right now about how, for example, if we talk about digital services and things like that, would help UK to offset the costs of exiting the European Union, shifting those to US and to the agreements in US. So if you go ahead and you do some research, you see that's a lot of intentions to make this happen, but it's a lot of things and roadblocks that needs to be overcome for that to be beneficial for both sides.
Great. Thanks. So we have a couple of minutes here left. I have 2 more questions. One is, Salil, do you guys offer removal services?
Yeah, we can put in touch with the right people for sure.
Okay, good. And the last one is, do you guys call on accounts on your own?
Do we what? Sorry? Do
you call on accounts on your own? From Jim Munson.
I'm not sure what that means, actually.
I gotta be honest with you, I'm not sure either. We're gonna say you guys do play an active role and you are proactive.
Yeah,
how about
we'll go with that.
We'll go with that, Jim. If we need A clarification, Jim, we'll get back. I know Jim Munson. Jim will get back to you on that if we can find out more information what you meant by that. I want to thank everybody. Salil, Matt, both of you, thank you very much. Alex, thank you. John, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add that people from a legal perspective need to be cognizant about?
Well, I think most of the issues that we can deal with from our side, the U.S. side for the clients are more business in nature, doing business, and in those cases, I work with my network of UK counsel. If I have someone who's a client that comes in though that wants relocation advice, then definitely I've learned a lot from this presentation about where best to go.
Right. And Melinda provides a lot of that as well, which is fantastic. Melinda, thank you for today. I want to ask Melinda, Danila, Alex, we have our next around the world stop in March. Is it the second week in March? Yes.
Yes, and we're confirming that with the next Berkshire Hathaway location, and that will be known soon.
By the way, Jim's response was accounts like British Telecom.
To ask the question again, Max.
Do you call on accounts yourself, like British Telecom?
Still not. I still don't understand.
All right, we'll get back to that one.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We'll get back to you on what that was.
I think if that one thing, if that question,
I think he's referring more to corporate accounts. Do you guys actively work with corporate accounts?
Yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, what we often find is, just very quickly, Max, is that often corporate companies will sometimes go by someone like Salil to look after the search if they don't have an in-house person. But actually what we're seeing quite a lot now is with some people, if they've lived in the UK before and maybe they're coming back here, they'll be given an allowance by their company to rent a property, or to rent, I don't think to buy, but to rent a property. And very much we would have, in some cases, we have relationships with those companies ourselves. And we have that relationship where we will then look after their search for them and help them find, perfect property.
I actually think that was the intent of the question, so that answered it very well.
We got that.
I want to thank Matt and Salil for today's discussion. Thank the rest of the team, our normal team, and I want to also share with you guys, World Trade Center Atlanta has a number of events in addition to this on a monthly basis. We have our first week of every month, we have our Global World Trade Centers Spotlight series. We present different World Trade Centers from around the world. And the third week of every month is a lunch with me. The fourth week of every month is our International Business Exchange. So I encourage everyone to go to our website. We're going through a website redesign by March. We hope to have a new design up, which will also feature a Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Georgia Properties link, a white label that will take all visitors to a co-branded page. You register with Berkshire Hathaway and any real estate closings that you have, there will be some discounts that will be offered. So we thank you once again. We look forward to seeing everybody in March and at any of our other, here with Around the World with Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices and any of our other programming. Thank you guys. And have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.